Well, here it is. You asked for it again, and so I'm showing it again. Can you believe it's been over a year since my first HomeLab tour? I've upgraded servers, consolidated servers, gotten rid of servers, and even added some Raspberry Pis. And I've also revamped my entire networking and consolidated quite a bit. But it's also grown too. I've added new services which required new hardware and even moved everything into its own dedicated room. And before I moved it into that room, I had to revamp the entire thing. And again, like my first tour, I've been putting this off until it was ready. But like I said last year, HomeLabs are never ready or done. They're always evolving and always continuing to grow. So while I wanted to wait until this was more ready, I figured now is the best time to do it. Plus it's getting close to the end of 2021. And so without further ado, here's my late 2021 HomeLab server tour. Okay, first up is this whole entire room. This room was nothing more than a hole in the wall with some storage. The previous owner marked it as sauna, but it seemed more like a grow room to me. Over the last few weeks, I transformed it into my server room or data center. This is all DIY except for the window, so don't judge me on the mudding and taping. Some of it was there already. And, well, I'm a tech guy. And before we get started on the whole thing, the first up was this smoke alarm. So I already have Nest fire and CO2 monitors in my home, so I figured adding another one in here would be a good idea, considering I have a lot of electrical equipment in here. And yeah, so this smoke alarm...
Ready in the kids' room. Press to test.
Well, they didn't have a preset for server room, so I figured this was close enough. So if you did notice, when you enter this room, the lights turn on automatically. That's because of this Hue switch here and this Hue sensor up here. And so I have some automation on Philips Hue that when it detects motion, it'll automatically turn on the lights. So if I walk in here, the lights should turn on automatically. So I've gone all out here too on Philips Hue and automation. I know that Philips Hue lights are pretty pricey, but I've been slowly building them up over time, and the automation and integration I get really can't be matched. I have two Hue Iris smart lights over here, and they're controllable too. And then I have a Philips Hue light that I put inside of my rack. And really, I just nudged it way down in there, looped it over here, and put it down there. Now it doesn't give off a ton of lights when the lights are on, but when the lights are off, it gives off just enough. And then I also have a Philips Hue light bulb inside of here. And all of that can be controlled from this Hue light switch right here. Now I can take this off or put it on, it's magnetized. But I can press the button to change the color temperature or turn them on and off, or the color temp, and also the brightness. This also changes them on the rack, and these iris lights as well. And if you're wondering how I automated all of these lights with motion, I have a Hue motion detection up here. The cool thing about this is that it has a thermometer inside. So I can monitor the temperature of this whole entire room from this sensor as well. And so this, along with my Hue Hub, gives me access to that data anywhere on my network. So I've been able to combine this temperature sensor and motion sensor, along with the Hue Hub, and along with some code I wrote, to automate some pretty cool stuff on my Raspberry Pi. So I can monitor the temperature in here now of this whole entire server room, and then possibly react on it if I like. Now right now it's just printing it out to an LED screen in my office, but in the future I could automate pumping heat out of here or pumping the heat back into the house to keep it warm. But for now, I haven't done any of this, so I have until the summer of next year to figure that out. So enough with the lights, let's talk about what's on the wall. If you remember from the first tour, I had a bunch of stuff attached to the wall just to make it easier to get to, and to keep it off the ground and for better cable management. Well, I considered putting everything in my rack again, but I found that it would have to either put up a ton of shelves or print out a ton of custom things just to get all of this inside of my server rack. So I decided I didn't want to go down that route. Also, I wanted to have a wall that gave me more flexibility than plywood and screws. I wanted a more industrial and modern pegboard, and so I found these. These are the wall control 30p galvanized steel pegboards, and I couldn't be happier with them. These wall boards gave me a ton of options for attaching things that are oddly shaped. It also gave me a ton of flexibility for adding pegs and hanging other things in the future. Now I used some standoffs and some wing nuts so you can get behind it, and I think that turned out pretty good. So let's start from the top and work our way down. So I have all of my cords coming through that hole over there. That was the only way to get them in here, and fortunately that hole was already there, but I kind of had to rig some stuff up to make it look nice. Well, a lot nicer than it did before. But I have this cable management sleeve that I just put on there. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it, but this cable management sleeve kind of hides some of the wires. And so all of these wires come down into this Tripp Lite patch panel. Now I only have 12 ports, but that's good enough for me. And I didn't add any actually during this upgrade. And I know it says Cat5e up there, and I do run Cat5e, but that still gives me gigabit Ethernet. So I still have the same ISP, and I still have the same fiber modem, and I still have the same speed. 300 up, 300 down. I could pay more for more, but I don't use anywhere close to 300 up, 300 down. But they're bumping me to 500 up, 500 down come 2022 and raising the cost of the lowest price package, which is what I have. So I'll be getting half a gig up, half a gig down here in a couple of months. So if we follow this down, we talked about the Philips Hue, but this is my Philips Hue Hub. It controls 20 to 30 devices in my home. It's fantastic. The reason why I always go with Philips Hue is because they actually have a really nice API too that I can write code against. So that's how I automate all the lights in my office and even the temperature regulation in the future in here. And so to the left is my Raspberry Pi. This one is PoE powered from my Switch. This one does a little bit more than the other one. It's running NutServer to control and manage all my UPSs. I have 3 plugged into it, and it monitors and coordinates shutdowns for most of my servers. It's also running a second instance of traffic and is my load balance proxy so that if one goes down, this one takes over. It's quickly becoming my junk drawer Pi server for quite a few things, but more to come on that. And so next up, we'll just go down here, is my UniFi Flex Mini. I don't know if you've seen these, but these are pretty awesome. So this Flex Mini is actually a layer 2 switch, and it's PoE powered. So this Ethernet coming in is PoE powered. It powers this whole entire switch, and then gives me layer 2 networking. So why would I want layer 2 networking here? Well, I get VLANs. So a lot of these devices are on different VLANs, and this was an easy way to give me VLANs on this wall. I actually have some of these sprinkled around the home too. Behind 2 of my TVs I have them for all the different devices. And so I run PoE here, Then I get layer 2 switching, and then I can assign VLANs to them. So it's pretty awesome. And like I mentioned, since it's on PoE powered, it's also on backup power too, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So next up is my HD Homerun. So the HD Homerun is a network tuner. I have a coax cable here that runs all the way up to the attic. The last owner was kind enough to leave a huge antenna suspended in the attic and a coax cable coming all the way to the basement. It's like they knew I was going to put an HD Homerun tuner down here. So all I had to do was snake this over to here and plug it in. And so then this is, again, on a VLAN, but connects to this mini switch here. And this is how I record all of my PBS and all of my other TV. And so this then connects to Plex, and that's how I consume my media. Okay, to the left is my old Intel NUC. So this one it's actually pretty old. This used to be my media center, believe it or not. Used to run Windows Media Center, I think 8. Right when they took it off 8, but then gave it back to you for free or something like that. I'm not sure. But this used to be my Windows Media Center, and then for a while it was just a test device. And when I bought it, I bought one that actually had a CPU that supported virtualization. So this has an i5 in there that supports virtualization, and I had the idea to install Proxmox on it. And it actually runs flawlessly. So I have 2 virtual machines running inside of here. Both of them are Kubernetes nodes, and they're both virtualized within Proxmox. So I did that so I could have a low-powered version of both Proxmox and Kubernetes in case something happens. And also, it helps establish quorum with Proxmox, although even though I had 2 nodes before, I never had a problem. It's nice to know that this one will win in a tiebreaker scenario. But more to come on low-powered Proxmox. Okay, to the left is my Pi Zero. So this is the same Pi Zero I talked about before. It's still doing the same task. Just pinging my servers, trying to wake them up if they're down with PoE packets or wake on LAN packets or magic packets, and then rebooting itself and trying that over and over again. So it's still doing that, but it also picked up another task. So this is actually my low-powered DNS server too. This is running Pi-hole. So the reason why I have yet another Pi-hole server, a third one, is just in case I reboot or power down all of the servers in here, this one will still provide DNS. And so this one is actually load balanced with my other DNS servers, and I'll have something coming on that soon. But what that gives me with all of these devices is a low powered solution in case I have to shut this whole entire rack down. Which can be the case if the power goes out, because the UPS that's down there doesn't last too long, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So following all of these wires down is one of my UPSs. So this is the APC 850V battery backup. This is consumer grade and actually works out really, really well. So this UPS alone can power this whole entire wall for about 2.5 hours if the power were to go down. And it's not like I'd need 2.5 hours of power, but this wall doesn't draw that much power. But in the case that I do, it's there. And if it were off that long, I would probably shut some of this down and conserve this battery and charge my phones and other devices. But that's it for this wall. So this wall over here is pretty blank. Now, originally I only bought 2 of these panels, but then the feng shui was kind of off with only 2 of these panels because I had 2 over here and a blank wall. So I decided to duplicate this other wall and create another one, which doubled the work I needed to do, but I think it turned out pretty good. So on this wall is just this cloud lamp that I thought was kind of nice. It gives some light, but really this wall is open for whatever I want to do. Because this is a pegboard, I can attach any pegboard attachments and hook up anything I want to this wall. But I think eventually I'm just going to connect some batteries and things like that and have this just be a big charging station. I don't know, I don't want too many things on the wall, but at the same time, I don't want them on floors or shelves either. So next up is something simple but necessary, and that's these power strips. Now these power strips are fantastic. These are extra 12 outlet power strips and they're wall mountable. And as you can see, they help deliver power to everything that's on the wall. So these are really fantastic and heavy duty and relatively cheap. And they were just the right size to fit underneath 2 of these pegboards. And so once I got one, again, feng shui was a little bit off and my OCD kicked in, so I got another one. Which is actually kind of nice because then I don't have to dangle and snake cords from this pegboard all the way over to here. And as you can see, that's quickly filling up. But yeah, kind of boring, but definitely essential. And I actually like these quite a bit, heavy duty. Okay, and real quick, I do have a camera down here, as you can see, but I haven't found the best place for it yet. It was kind of hanging out up here, but right as I started recording, I tripped on the cord and it fell down, so I have no idea if it still works. I hope it does. So I tucked it in here, but anyways, the point is that I'm gonna mount this camera somewhere in here so that I have some video security in here too. Okay, so now for my server rack. So I'm still using the SysRack's 18U 4-post rack that I couldn't be happier with. This rack is built like a tank and houses everything I need. I have some plans for this rack if you have a 4-post rack or something similar. So be sure you're subscribed to see what I'm gonna be up to. But let's start from the top down. First is this UPS on a shelf. Now I know this isn't the greatest place for UPS, but I needed to mount it somewhere. And I didn't want to mount it on the wall. This switch though is dedicated to my UDM Pro and my network switch. This gives me almost 2.5 hours of runtime, which is fantastic. So if the power goes out, both my UDM and my Switch Pro will have power. And the cool thing about that is that I have lots of PoE devices. So that includes cameras, mini switches, access points, and even some Raspberry Pis. And it's yet another reason why I went all in with a PoE switch. This will keep everything running for quite a bit of time. If the power's out for more than an hour, it's most likely gonna be off longer, so I can shut things down to conserve some power. And yeah, I haven't found the best place for this yet, so I just mounted it up there. But just know, it's gonna be somewhere a little more permanent in the future. So first is my patch panel. This is the Detroit Packing Co. 24-port patch panel. I use it because it's much easier to patch in Ethernet cables than to punch down all 24. Plus, it lets me connect longer cables if I need to move this around in the future. And these are the same cables that I used before, these slim Cat6 cables, which have this translucent kind of boot on them, which I think is really nice. A lot of people warn me about these smaller cables and how they might catch on fire, but I haven't had any fires yet. And they've been working out fantastic. I haven't had one die, they work great. And if there is a fire, I have that to warn me. So anyways, good looking out, but they've been working out just great. And so most of these are attached to my 24-port PoE Gen 2 switch. Now, this is a UniFi switch, as you can tell, and this is the USW Pro. And so all 24 ports of these are PoE powered. You know, if I could do it over again, I would have gotten 48, because as you can see, I don't have much space left, if any. Most of these lights are turned on. But I do have 1 or 2 free that I can swap around, but if I had 48, I'd never have to worry about that. But 16 of these are PoE Plus and 8 are PoE Plus+. So that gives me some flexibility to power different things. And this switch powers and connects every device in my home, albeit some are attached to Flex Minis, but this is my core switch for my home. But yeah, like I mentioned, if I could do it all over again, I would have gotten a 48, but maybe in the future, in a future upgrade video. So then this switch is uplinked through a 10 gig SFP Plus port to my UDM Pro. Now, this is not a Gen 2, this is a Gen 1, but it's my UDM Pro. So this runs UniFi Network and Network Protect. So UniFi Network has given me security features on my gateway as well as on my LAN. It's given me threat management, deep packet inspection, VPN, and Wi-Fi AI. Now that's just a bunch of marketing for automatically tuning and adjusting my access points based on interference, but it's nice that that does that. And it also gives me a 10 gig port for WAN, but I'm not using it, as you can see right there. And also, since the last video, I started using UniFi Protect as my home security system. You can see that hard drive light that's in there that's flashing. Now, I was a longtime Blue Iris user, and don't get me wrong, it's a fine product. I probably used it for almost a decade. But with most of my network, I wanted something that was a little more integrated, and also I wanted to manage my camera, settings, firmware, all in one place, and have on-prem object detection, and use as little power as possible while keeping it all here at home on premise. So UniFi checked all these boxes. And plus, I was already in with UniFi networks, so moving to cameras was just the next logical step for me. Now I know it's polarizing, and again, I love Blue Iris, but I made the switch, and for now, this is working out pretty good. So next up is my Cisco SG18 18-port gigabit switch. Now you can see nothing's plugged into there. I retired this a while ago, and I found that this was probably the best place to store it. Plus, it looks a little nicer than a blank panel, but I'm getting rid of it soon, so I've just been storing it here. So next up is my pair of SuperMicro servers. So these are SuperMicro bare bones 1U servers. These are 1U servers that run all of my virtual servers. Both are running Proxmox, and one has my video card passed through to it, the one on the top for encoding on my GPU, and one has my HBA controller passed through to it to run TrueNAS. And the lights just went out because of motion detection. There we go. Well, motion detection works, but these servers have half a terabyte of DDR4 in them combined. So that's 256 gigs each. And these run all of my virtual machines and run them very fast. If you want to see the full build on the server, check out my 1U upgrade video. I talk about that and everything that's inside of there, and nothing's changed. I haven't touched or added a single thing since then. Well, actually, I doubled the RAM, but I mentioned I might do that in that video and then did it a week later. But yeah, 100% the same, and they're working great. So right below this is my PC conversion server. It still has the laser beam light. You don't want to look directly in that because it'll blind you. But I converted this PC a long time ago using a Chenbro server case. So this server used to run Proxmox along with a few VMs and had my GPUs in it. But since then, I've repurposed it to a plain old Ubuntu server with a large ZFS pool. So this does local backups of almost everything on my network and keeps a local copy of it here just in case I need to restore it, rather than restore everything from the cloud. I schedule it to boot up at night and then shut down about 30 minutes later. I use SyncThing to sync most of my data to it, and I've thought about using TrueNAS, but I might have something coming in the future to replace it, so I haven't done that yet. But really, this is just a second copy of my data that's on-prem that I can restore if I need to. So below this is my disk shelf. So this is the same disk shelf I bought on eBay about a year ago. I was lucky enough to snag one before chia farming became a thing, because after that, sellers were charging 5x what I paid for it. I still have 6 8 terabyte Iron Wolf drives in here in the RAID Z2, and I have one SSD in here for cache. Although I don't think I have it configured properly, but it's there. Now this is connected to an HBA controller over an odd SAS mini cable that connects to my 1U server up here that is virtualizing TrueNAS. And so not much has changed there. I am quickly running out of space, but I'm gonna figure out something to do with all this YouTube archival footage that I don't really need. I think the figuring out what I'm gonna do is just delete it and not save it anymore and only save the final render, or maybe save some B-roll, but haven't figured that out. So below that is my Tripp Lite UPS. So this UPS powers everything in the server rack except for my network equipment. And unfortunately, it'll only run for about 10 minutes, which doesn't give me a ton of time. But it does give me about 5 or 6 minutes to decide if I'm gonna shut down all of my servers. So this is what the NUT server up there, over here, is going to coordinate. And then it will turn them back on when the power comes back on. So that final step is what I need to do. And if you noticed in my NUT server video that I have, that tutorial video talks about this specific problem, is I want to turn this server back on when the power's back on. And so, what's next? Well, as I just mentioned, I do have some plans. I have some plans for some more storage servers, some plans for networking, some plans for things on the wall, and a lot more automation. And I have some plans for this rack itself, physically, how it looks and how it operates. And I ask you the same thing. What's next for you? What's next for your home lab? What's the next thing you're gonna upgrade? Let me know in the comments section below. And remember, if you found anything in this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
General, is that a Meta sweatshirt? No, it does look like it, doesn't it? This is not a Meta sweatshirt. No, I do not work for Facebook. No, this is a Discord sweatshirt. That's Discord's fancy logo. No, it's a Discord sweatshirt. It's a Discord right there. I promise it's not a Meta sweatshirt. I don't work for Facebook. You can't fool me even if you change your name. But yeah, good call. Yeah, it's funny when I saw their logo, I'm like, that's like a stretched out Visual Studio logo. Like they just stretched it and turned it just a tiny bit, like an infinite loop, you know, which, you know, arguably the old VS Code logo kind of looked like that, but it's basically like an infinite loop stretched. I don't know.